Imagine the scene. You've dedicated your entire life to building an empire. Every brick, every wall, every piece of furniture inside that place. It was all the fruit of years of sweat, sacrifice, and a vision no one else dared to have. And then, in the twilight of your life, when you most need affection and respect, the people you loved most, those for whom you would do anything, decide to throw you away. Throw away not only your dignity, but also your home, your comfort, your freedom. This is my story, and believe me, the ending is not what you expect. If you think you know where this is going, think again, because what happened next, well, even my own children couldn't predict it. My name is Elisa, or, as I used to be called by my employees and everyone in town, the Golden Lady. Not for luxury, but because everything I touched seemed to turn into prosperity. From a very young age, I understood the value of hard work and independence. I didn't have an easy life. I started from scratch, like many of you. No resources, no godparents, just the strength of my arms and a restless mind. I saw an opportunity where most saw only difficulties: elder care. In my time, this wasn't valued as it is today. Nursing homes were cold, soulless places, but I dreamed of a different place. A place where old age was dignified, surrounded by affection, respect, and peace. That's how the Golden Haven was born. It started small, with just a few beds, but with a huge heart. I took care of everything myself, from the kitchen to the cleaning, going through every detail of the administration. My life became the Golden Haven. Every plant in the garden, every curtain, every smile from my residents, it was all a part of me, and the business flourished. From a small, elderly home, it transformed into a modern complex, with lush gardens, daily activities, a top-notch team, and, most importantly, an impeccable reputation. It was my legacy, my masterpiece. I had 2 children, Anna and Pedro. I raised them with all the love and resources I could offer, even if it often meant sacrificing my own time and rest. They grew up in a comfortable environment, never having to worry about the difficulties I faced. Anna, in particular, was always the most spoiled, the one who demanded the most attention, and the one who seemed to see the world only through the lens of what she could gain from it. Pedro was calmer, more thoughtful, but still very influenced by his sister Dot. As the years passed and I grew older, I began to feel the weight of management. The Golden Haven was large, and I no longer had the same energy to supervise everything as before. I started thinking about succession. My children were my only heirs, and the idea of passing my legacy on to them brought me a certain peace. After all, they were my flesh and blood. I trusted them, or so I thought. I had already transferred most of my shares and control of the company to a family holding, with them as the main administrators. I kept a small part for myself, just to have a voice, a symbolic vote, and ensure my principles were maintained. I lived in a beautiful house within the Golden Haven complex itself, a place I built for myself, with direct access to the gardens and everything I loved. It was my refuge, my home. Health, as you know, creeps up on you and plays tricks. One day, after a small illness, nothing serious, but enough to make me a little more fragile and dependent, Anna and Pedro started acting strangely. They convinced me that I needed special care, constant monitoring, something my house, however comfortable, couldn't offer. First, I was reluctant, but they were so persuasive, so concerned, that I eventually gave in. "Mom, it's for your own good, for your safety," Anna would say, with eyes brimming with false concern. "You deserve to rest after all you've built," Pedro would add, with a seriousness I swore was sincere. I didn't realize, at that moment, that these words were just the tip of the iceberg of a betrayal that would change everything. They were convincing me to move into one of the most luxurious suites in the Golden Haven itself, in what they called the VIP area for special patients. I thought, how lucky I am to be able to stay in my own haven, cared for by my children. Poor Eliza. Little did I know that this paradise was about to become my own prison. I moved into the suite. It looked like a luxury hotel room, with a view of the gardens I had planned myself. At first, everything seemed perfect. The staff was attentive, the food excellent, but the routine soon began to change. My visits to the gardens were limited as a precaution. My outings to the city, to avoid risks. My cell phone stayed with the nurse so you wouldn't get tired with unnecessary calls. The excuses were always the same. "For your own good, Mom." But the truth, my friends, is that those words were just a smokescreen for the harsh reality that was forming around me. I was trapped inside my own home, inside my own legacy. At first, I convinced myself it was out of concern. After all, I was more fragile, and my children, busy with the Golden Havens administration, wanted me safe. But the feeling of being under surveillance grew each day. The nurses and caregivers, once so accessible, now seemed to follow a script. My conversations with other residents were monitored. Any attempt to ask about the business, about the Haven's finances, was quickly diverted. "Don't worry about that now, Mom. Pedro is handling everything. He's an excellent administrator," Anna assured me, with a forced smile that I, naively, still tried to believe. One afternoon, I tried to use the suite's phone to call an old friend, my trusted lawyer, Dr. Almeida. I needed to talk to him about some doubts that were nagging at my mind, but the line was having problems. I tried again, at other times, and the answer was always the same. I started to suspect, why wasn't my phone working? Why couldn't I have free access to something so basic? The last straw came when I tried to request a visit to my private office within the complex, where I kept some personal documents and mementos. "Oh, Mom, the office is under renovation," Anna said, with a tone of voice that didn't convince me. "Pedro needs that space to organize some urgent things," Pedro added, avoiding my gaze. At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Renovation, but I hadn't authorized any renovation there, and the office. It was my sanctuary, my secret place. I began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The special care became seclusion. The constant monitoring turned into surveillance. The rest was isolation. And well-being was the excuse to take away my autonomy. I was no longer the golden lady, the respected founder. I was a resident, an inmate, and worst of all, inside my own empire. Anger began to boil within me, but I knew I couldn't show it. This game was dangerous. If they thought I was suspicious, they might intensify their surveillance. I needed to act intelligently, with the same cunning that built the Golden Haven. But how? No phone, no access to my office, surrounded by staff who seemed to be under my children's orders. I was in a labyrinth, and the exit seemed impossible. Sadness mixed with a cold determination. Those I raised, those I loved unconditionally, were treating me like a burden, an obstacle. The image of my children laughing, spending my money, and living a life of luxury at my expense, while I was locked in my own home, was unbearable. But they had made a fundamental mistake. A mistake that would cost them dearly. They underestimated old Elisa. They forgot who I truly was. They forgot that, behind the fragility, the mind of the Golden Lady still existed, and that mind was planning something they would never see coming. I knew I couldn't react impulsively. Anger was a poison that could blind me. I needed calm, strategy. My mind, which they thought was fragile, began to work like never before. Every employee, every routine, every detail of the Golden Haven was known to me. After all, I built it. I knew its weaknesses and its strengths, and I knew that not everyone was at Anna and Pedro's service. There are always good-hearted people, even in the darkest places. It was then that hope emerged, from where I least expected it. One of the new caregivers, a young woman named Sophia, had a different look about her. She treated me with genuine affection, not with the professional coldness I saw in others. Sophia was a recent graduate, idealistic, and didn't seem to have been trained by my daughter to keep me isolated. She brought me books, talked to me about the outside world, about her aspirations. She truly listened to me. During one of our many supervised walks in the garden, I took advantage of a moment when the other nurse was distracted. With a quick glance and an almost inaudible voice, I whispered to Sophia, "Could you do me a favor? A very important favor? And I'll never forget it." Sophia's face contorted in a mix of surprise and curiosity. She simply nodded slightly, without saying a word, indicating that she heard me. I didn't ask her to free me, or to call the police. I asked for something much more subtle, but infinitely more powerful. I asked her to go to the reception desk and, discreetly, check a specific phone number on an old contact list that was kept in the drawer of my desk in the main office. A number I had memorized years ago, but which, under the pressure of confinement, I feared forgetting. The number of Dr. Almeida, my lawyer, the one they were preventing me from contacting. Sophia, with an innocence and courage that moved me, managed to get the information. She handed me a small piece of paper with the number hidden in the palm of her hand during one of our meetings. At that moment, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone. There was still goodness in the world. The next step was riskier. I needed a phone that wasn't monitored. The staff suites had landlines, without the blocks on mine. I knew the caregiver's break room was empty during lunch. I used an excuse about needing a glass of water from the dispenser outside the suite. And while the on-duty caregiver stepped away for a moment, I slipped into the staff room. With my heart pounding, I dialed Dr. Almeida's number. His voice, on the other end of the line, was like a bomb. "Elisa, is that really you? Why haven't you called before? I'm worried." I couldn't give details over the phone. I just said, "Doctor, I need you to come to the Haven. It's urgent. There are things that need to be resolved. Something about the administration. And please, come alone. No one can know." Dr. Almeida, a trusted and sharp-minded man, understood the gravity in my tone of voice. He scheduled the visit for the next day, under the pretext of settling old paperwork so as not to raise suspicion. I had a chance, only one, and I would use it. The plan began to take shape in my mind. They underestimated me. They thought I was a fragile, defenseless old woman, but they forgot that I built the Golden Haven with cunning, resilience, and, above all, a deep knowledge of every corner and every law that governs it. The stage was set for my big turning point, and they had no idea what was coming. Karma was about to knock on their door, and it would not forgive. The next day arrived, filled with a mix of nervousness and a cold determination. I knew I needed to stay calm, to act as if everything were normal. Dr. Almeida arrived punctually and was greeted by Ana and Pedro, who tried to appear welcoming, but their eyes watched me with an intensity that betrayed their suspicion. "My old friend Elisa needs to sign some old documents. Nothing serious," Dr. Almeida said, with his deep, confident voice. My children nodded, still cautious. I was in the visiting room, dressed and with a posture that hid the hurricane inside me. Dr. Almeida came to me. He handed me a folder of documents, but inside it, hidden among the papers, was a special pen. A pen with a small voice recorder. With an almost imperceptible wink, he signaled to me. My time had come. "Ana Pedro," I began, with a surprisingly firm voice. "I want to talk to you about the future of the Golden Haven. I have some concerns." They exchanged glances, surprised by my initiative. Ana, always the most cunning, sat closer. "Concerns, Mom, what are you talking about?" "Everything is going very well. Pedro is doing an excellent job." "Excellent?" I questioned, allowing a slight tone of doubt, because I noticed that the investments we had planned for improvements aren't happening, and the quality of services seems to have decreased. Employees are demotivated. My children tried to justify themselves with flimsy excuses about an economic crisis and restructurings. "Mom, you don't understand business like we do now. You're old, and you need to rest. Let us take care of it," Anna blurted out, her patience running thin. That was the cue I needed. "Old Anna," I said, my voice rising slightly, but still controlled. "Old, but not stupid. Do you think I haven't noticed that you've imprisoned me here, that you've cut off my contact with the world? That you prevent me from accessing my own office, where the most important documents of my life are?" Pedro, who had remained quieter, finally spoke up, with a tone of reprimand. "Mom, you're delusional. We're taking care of you. It's for your own good. And these documents, who knows what you would do with them in this state?" It was the checkmate moment. I looked directly into Ana and Pedro's eyes. "You want to know what I would do with those documents? I would do what I've always done, ensure justice, and ensure that my legacy is respected." I took a deep breath. "You forgot a small detail, a crucial detail that I kept to myself, precisely for a day like this." A cold, determined smile appeared on my lips. "You institutionalized me in my own nursing home. You locked me in my own property, the property you thought you would fully inherit, but you made a fatal mistake." I raised the recording pen, no longer hiding it. "You forgot that. Even though I transferred most of the shares, I kept a percentage. A small percentage, yes. But that, combined with a specific clause in my original will and my personal ownership of the physical structure of the entire Golden Haven building, gave me a power you never imagined." Ana and Pedro's eyes widened. Panic began to set in on their faces. I am not just the founder and minority shareholder. I am the legal and exclusive owner of the physical property where the Golden Haven operates. You are administrators of a company that operates in a building I own, and now, with the proof of your actions, recorded, with witnesses, and with the activation of the bad faith and abuse of power clause in the holdings management, I can and will not only remove you from the administration, but also evict your holding company from my building, or demand a total renegotiation on my terms. The silence in the room was deafening. The revelation hit them like lightning. Karma had arrived, and it came with an eviction notice. The shock on Anna and Pedra's faces was indescribable. Their arrogance turned into despair. They tried to argue, to beg, but it was too late. Dr. Almeida, who had remained silent until then, confirmed every word of mine. The clauses, the documents, the ownership of the building, everything was in order, and the recorded audio, with their confession of the delusion and state they attributed to me, would be irrefutable proof of bad faith. The process of removing them from the administration was swift and merciless. With the evidence in hand, and Dr. Almeida's sharp intellect, there was no chance of defense. They were stripped of all their positions in the holding company and lost control of the Golden Haven. My shares, combined with the property ownership and the bad faith clauses, allowed me to regain full control. It was a victory, yes, a victory for justice. But its taste was bitter. To see my own children, those I loved and sacrificed so much for, become strangers, driven by greed and a lack of respect. It hurt more than any prison. They lost not only control of the empire I built, but also something much more valuable, my trust and my unconditional love for Anna and Pedro. The lesson was harsh. They had to face the public consequences of their actions. They were seen as the ungrateful children who tried to take advantage of their own mother. The Golden Haven, under my direct supervision again, prospered with a new team of competent and loyal administrators, and with Sophia, the courageous caregiver, promoted to a position of trust. The place returned to being the paradise I dreamed of. The reputation for excellence was restored, and the residents once again felt the atmosphere of affection and respect. As for me, I decided I no longer wanted to live in that luxury suite. I returned to my small, cozy house within the complex, surrounded by my books and the memories of my life. I spent most of my time in the gardens, talking with the residents, telling stories, and receiving the genuine affection I had so desperately missed. I learned that true wealth is not in what we own, but in the relationships we build and the respect we cultivate. My children, they tried to approach me after a while, with remorse, with apologies, but the bridge was broken. I forgave them in my heart, because hatred only consumes us, but trust, that once broken, is very difficult to rebuild. The lesson was learned, not only by them, but by me as well. Never underestimate the wisdom of experience and the strength of a heart that, despite being wounded, still beats for justice. And so, the Golden Lady, who was cast aside, returned to claim her throne. Not a throne of power, but a throne of dignity and love. This is my Karma's Chronicle, the story of how a mother taught her children that greed has a price, and that karma always finds its way to balance the scales. May this story serve as a warning and inspiration to all of you. The choices we make shape our destiny, and this story is living proof of that. If you felt inspired, moved, or shocked, please hit the like button, subscribe to, and share your reflections in the comments. What's the biggest lesson you took from all of this?